saw that in your post, by the way. I really like that. 4. You saw what in the post? 2. Knowing what you don't know. What's up, everyone? Welcome to Simulation. How's it going? Today we have a very exciting episode. We're going to be featuring Dr. Jordan Shlain.
Yeah, look at that.
What up?
Here we go.
Thank you for coming on to the show.
Sure.
Greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we first met like 2 years ago at this really interesting dinner that you were throwing with Jamie Haywood. Mm-hmm. And you guys were taking blood pre-dinner and post-dinner and analyzing like what happens. Mm-hmm.
There was really good wine in the middle. So it's what does really good wine do to the physiology of the body? We know what it does to the liver, but a lot of other biomarkers out there.
Yeah, and this was 2 years ago. And I was first just, little kid, 23 years old. I'm still a little kid, still know nothing, but
pretty much.
Yeah. And I mean, when I was there, I really felt very blessed to be there. There were some very big game changers in that room that are working on the forefront, on the edge of what's known in measuring biomarkers and leveraging machine learning to figure out predictions in health and preventions and disease forming. I mean, this is all like super important for longevity and super important for health. Mm-hmm. And I was just blown away that you guys were doing that
and having fun. I mean, if you're not having fun, what are you doing? Yeah. I think there's so much gravity around healthcare. There's a lot of excitement, but it's a serious, trade. People's lives, there's a lot of excitement about what the future could be, but when you're in the middle of it, it's you're dealing with people that think they have cancer or do have cancer or broke their leg or someone's got arthritis and someone's really sick and that's like the daily stuff. And so to make sure there's levity amongst the gravity, is I think humor I wish I could write a prescription for it because I think it does lighten the stress on oneself, which then kind of probably helps the immune system heal oneself. So it's not an exact science, but it's just pattern recognition over time.
Yeah, and these are the things that are very difficult to measure. We see cortisol affecting health quite a bit, but who measures laughter and overall just happiness, like vibing with life on health? Mm-hmm. So this started at Berkeley with physiology. How did you even know that you wanted to get into health?
Oh, yeah. How did I know? That's the easiest question you're probably going to throw all day to me. My father, son of an immigrant, grew up in Detroit. His dad told him, "You will be a doctor," kind of what every immigrant parent wants their kid to be. And so my dad became a doctor, and then he moved out to California, met my mom. They're both from Detroit. And my mom was at Berkeley, and my dad was doing a residency out here at UCSF and they had me, and my father said to me, "You can be whatever you want when you grow up, as long as you're a doctor." So that was like a steady diet of that my whole life. So I was like, I guess I'm gonna be a doctor. Yep. And I was like pre-med while I was in middle school, and I didn't know it. Like it was, I wouldn't call it brainwashing, but maybe I would. But I was fascinated by his life. He had he was a very smart guy, but he seemed to love what he did. He could kind of set his own schedule. He was helping people. He made decent money. Yeah. And it was like, yep. I like those things in life. Like I kind of like saw his life as he wasn't grinding, when the pager went off in the middle of the night and he was gonna go save somebody's life. Like he loved it. So he was the guy that would show up, like take that case that nobody wanted at 3 a.m. with the infected bowels and then go in there and do a 9 hour. He'd come home with like blood splatters on his glasses and, exhausted and tell us all about it at the dinner table the next day. So it was great. So I just had a lot of modeling around it. So anyway, off I went to Berkeley, and anatomy and physiology were interesting. And there was a teacher there, Marion Diamond, who was I think she's still around, but she was like this guru anatomy teacher. And if you could get her, so I was kind of drawn to that because of her. Usually teachers make the difference. And then it was just off to the races, I loved it. And I was applying to medical school.
Let's chime in along the way here.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, crazy cool dad and like family, and it can be overwhelming at times for a kid to just be pre-med in middle school because of parents. But at the same time, it's also very rewarding to have conversations at the dinner table about a father that takes the pager and paging that's happening in the middle of the night and runs out and goes and helps save someone's life and comes back and teaches at the dinner table about what was going on. I mean, that is so rewarding. That's like a really amazing experience that I hope so many other kids get to hear about and have in their lives. And then,
unfortunately, medicine's like become a pretty hellish place right now for doctors. So I don't think a lot of doctors are coming home to their kids and bringing anything forward that resembles joy. I mean, I hope it does, but it is a shit show out there in medicine right now, and is not getting better. And we can talk about that at a macroeconomic level and why, but.
Yes, we will. We're going to unpack that because that's so important, is how do we make the healthcare system actually function more optimally for families and for actual health.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the step to what your experience was when you went to Kenya. This is interesting. Teach us about this.
So, story of my life, kind of happenstance and serendipity come together as ingredients, and then things happen to me. Or I happened to them, I don't know. But I was at a graduation party at Berkeley. I met this woman at just a bar. We were having some friends, and she said, "Really, you're going to go to medical school right after Berkeley? Didn't you do summer school to take your MCATs last year? And didn't you do summer school the year before that to do biochemistry? And didn't you do summer school the year before that to do organic chemistry?" And I said, "Yeah, I did." She goes, "So you had 4 years of college with no summer?" I said, "Yeah, but I got good grades." And my strategy was take the hardest class I was going to have to take the next year during the summer and just take one class and like have a kind of you can get an A in the summer if you're doing one class. But then the next year I could take history and philosophy or something, or music, because everyone else had to take that really hard class. And it really, amongst all the other classes. So this girl said to me, "You should take a year off and you should go." And I was like, "What?" Like that had never, I was already applied to medical schools. And like I was launched. Like this has been my plan forever and my father's plan forever. And so she wrote down a phone number. This is pre-cell phone, pre-internet days. This is circa 1989. She wrote down a number. I put it in my pocket. And the next morning, I woke up and I'm like, I'm going to call this number. It wasn't 867-5309, by the way. And it was.
Do you understand
we played that song.
Reference?
867-5309.
We just played that song in our band the other night, so it's kind of in my head. And it was this program at Harvard called World Teach, and I said, "Yeah, I'm inquiring about what you guys do." And they said, "Well, we put teachers in countries all around the world." And they said, "By the way, the deadline to apply is today, and we don't need any more English teachers." And I said, "Oh, well, I'm actually probably not a good English teacher. Like I can't spell, and I'm not, my grammar sucks." And I said, "But I know science better than any, And they're like, "Oh, really? We don't have any science teachers." And they said, "Can you teach chemistry?" I'm like, "Sure." "Can you teach physics?" "Sure." "Can you teach biology?" "Sure." They said, "Hold on a second." And so literally they connected me with somebody at Berkeley who is a Harvard alumni of this organization, World Teach, and I had an interview locally. And the next thing you know, I was doing my after college Eurail pass, and I was in Florence, and I called my mom to see if I'd gotten accepted to this program. She goes, "You got accepted to Georgetown Medical School, and you got accepted to World Teach, and World Teach said you could go to Kenya, Costa Rica, or China to teach. Where would you like to go?" So I remember sitting at the
piazza. They gave you an option too. Interesting.
Science teachers were in demand, so I was at the Piazza di Michelangelo above, overlooking Florence, and I was staying in a little campground.
Contemplating your next life decision.
And I was like, So I immediately called Georgetown and I said, "Can you take my acceptance out and give it to me next year? Can you defer my acceptance for a year?"
Yes.
And they're like, "Sure, that's the easiest decision we can make because now we can give somebody else who was really qualified that spot." So I deferred, and then I picked Kenya, and the next thing you know, I came back home, got my immunizations, and wound up in a town called Kitale, which is an old colonial town, and I did 8 weeks of 8 hours a day. You were learning Swahili. Whoa. You will be teaching in Swahili.
Whoa.
And I was like, whoa, okay. And it was like a super jarring moment of existence because here I was at Berkeley in the trenches studying, and then I was in Europe doing my, visiting countries and seeing things I'd never seen before. And then I'm in like rural, no electricity, no running water, no vehicles, high on a plateau, thrown into a school with like the windows are just there's no glass. They're just cutouts, like buildings with, and I was the only white guy, and the little kids who had never seen a white person before were like, they'd run up and want to touch me. And so it was like a real, whoa, moment of existence. But I learned a ton being there. And one of the major aha moments that I had, there's probably two or three, but this was the big one, is I'd been, you had to, you've seen the women with the big urns that walk around. So I was like really far on a plateau, really far from anything. But we overlooked Lake Victoria, and it was a beautiful, stunning. And these women would climb down this cliff that was probably 5 meters of rocky, jaggedy, and there was a little water that came out the side of it. They'd fill up the urns, put them on their head, and climb back up with kids and goats. And like, I don't know how they did it, but they've been doing it for probably 1,000 years, right? And that's how they get their water. And I, of course, needed water to brush my teeth and make my coffee and make my rice, because I had to go.
You looked like a fool trying to do that at your first.
Well, I was like, okay, first of all, it's kind of like rocky and perilous, it's not like a path, and so I did it, and I'd fill up my things, and I was just like one of the, like, I wanted to really blend in and not, the white guy with crazy blonde hair, like I didn't really blend in, but I wanted to like really immerse myself in the way they did it. I didn't want to be above it, and do things the Western way. And so about 6 months into my stay there, I woke up one morning, and by the way, you wake up when the sun comes up, because that's your light. Like when the sun goes down, there's no light. It's like dark. You have to have you have a candle with lard, and it costs money, and not everybody had candles, So when it was dark, you have a bunch of people sitting in a room talking, and you couldn't see anybody. But it was like human radio.
Fires,
There wasn't even fires. So one day I heard all this noise kind of off in the distance, and a bunch of people talking, and kind of as it was pre-dawn, I looked out and I saw all these moms lined up, over probably about 40 meters away. It was pretty far. So I walk over there, and someone had, on the other property, put a spigot with a hose, not a hose, but just a water faucet. And they had somehow found a well, pumped water, and apparently this had been in the works for like a decade. We're going to get water to the plateau. Hydro, whatever. And so these people were fascinated. Like all of a sudden they didn't have to climb down the thing. And so all the women lined up pre-dawn with their kids, and it was like 100 of them. And they would take their urns and fill it up. And so then I was like, that's better. So then I would walk over, and all I wanted was in the morning, I just want to brush my teeth. So I would just walk up to the front of the line with just a cup. And I would say, can I fill my water up? And I was the teacher in town. I was helping the kids. So I had most favored nation status. There was a lot of tribal stuff that goes on in those villages, like infighting and tons of drama, tons of drama. Whoa. And another story. I've got a bunch of stories. I had a voodoo curse put on me eventually, because anyway. So
this is stuff for episode 2.
Yeah, that's a whole other story. So I was in line, and I would go there every morning, and I'd fill up my cup, and I hadn't had my coffee yet. I hadn't I wasn't awake. I'd just walk out there and want to brush my teeth, and I'd use the rest, make some water and coffee, and I realized that the water wasn't coming out of the spigot very fast. And I realized that these people had never seen a spigot before. And what I thought was, I wonder if when they walked up to it and they turned it on and water came out, they were so happy that they didn't realize that if they continued to turn it, it would come out faster. So I asked the woman in Swahili I'm like, hey, I'm thinking, aha, I'm going to show them, I'm going to show them something. In fact, I taught them how to make French fries up there, cut a potato and boil it. Like they'd never seen French fries. Anyway, another story. Probably a bad thing, by the way, introducing French fries. But I said to the woman, and I showed her, I said, let me show you something. And I turned the thing, and water came way out faster. And all the women that were in the front of the line kind of backed up. They're like, whoa. And the other women were too busy chatting. And I'm smiling. I'm like, kind of cool, huh? And this woman looked at me, and she had big gap teeth, and it was dark. It was like pre-dawn. And she looked at me with this big smile that I'll never forget. And she put it right back to where it was. And she said, what's the rush? And it was a moment of significant cognitive dissonance for me. I'm like, huh? And then I grabbed my cup, and I kind of walked back to my little hut that I was living in. And I was thinking, holy smokes, this water represents work. They're going to clean the house. they're gonna cook, they're gonna wash dishes, they're gonna wash clothes, and when the water goes slow, this is the only time these women get together and hang out. This is social hour. This is about community.
Yeah.
It's about people and humanity and dignity and laughter, and that work is water. You get home with your water, you're working. It's all work. Maybe food, so cooking, but then you get to eat it. But so I realized that, this Western idea of efficiency, like efficiency is the most important thing. So I walked away with, okay, at some point efficiency decays, diminishes, is corrosive to quality at a high level in just human interaction. So like on various social media platforms, you can be very efficient with your communication, but are you losing something? And you are, and what is it? And like, how do you these things are soft and they're not obvious, and so we generally, because we can't measure them, we don't, and we just write them off. But like, I think what we're seeing in the world today is we've become so efficient at so many things that we just want robots to do it for us now. And people are becoming more lonely, depressed, like because humanity and dignity and all the things that make humans human is we need other humans, and humans aren't efficient. In fact, they're the opposite of efficient, but they're high quality. So so I took that lesson and made sure that whatever I did, I'd pay attention to the efficiency quality ratio, and what am I not seeing as I'm becoming efficient? Where's the quality? So I look for things that are hard to find, and these very subtle, nuanced things that I believe eventually will become obvious, but they're so unobvious until they become obvious that it just like a flip switches one day and you're like, why did that happen? But you could have seen it happening if you were really paying attention. So that was my big aha moment, and I've kind of taken that philosophy or that perspective through everything that I do.
I love that. What's the rush?
What's the rush?
And I can feel what it could have felt like being across from her when you did that. And she was like, what's the rush?
And she put it right back.
Right
back.
back.
I was like, whoa.
This is time for us to be a community here right now, and they knew more about the efficiency quality ratio than the Western world, and it's still
Well,
really.
I think there's a natural state of humans that understands what quality is. I think there's also a natural curiosity. Like, I think animals are as efficient as they can be in what they do because they have to. Like, it's how they exist. Like, they have to be efficient with safety, they have to be efficient with food, but there's a different kind of efficiency in the animal world. But they're super efficient. They figured it out over generations. Humans have this thing called curiosity, and humans have this ability to envision multiple potential futures, right? And as a result of this curiosity, the ability to hold in your head multiple versions of the future, what we do is we think, oh my God, we should get that. That would be cool. Like, and all this whole technology, here we are in Silicon Valley, San Francisco, everyone's with robotics and blockchain, and oh my God, it's just gonna be better because it's more efficient. And it's like, we are deluding ourselves and diluting ourselves with this concept that all this stuff's gonna make things better. And I was having a really interesting conversation last night with a bunch of moms and dads, and my daughter graduated 8th grade, and we were talking about how how hard middle school is for kids, and how like these kids get in these arguments and the parents want to get in and like meddle in their kids' affairs. And like, I got this one text from a mom saying, your daughter said this to my son, and you need to, like, I got that like a year ago, and I looked at it and I delete like that. Like, I'm not going to meddle in my like. And so I said, I bet if we looked at over the course of 1,000 generations of humans. So we can't, right? We can only look at our 8th grade scenario. Like, but I said, do you know what I barely remember what my 8th grade.
What did your daughter say to the kid?
What?
What did your daughter say to the kid?
Oh, it was like someone had accused my daughter of saying that some girl was, flirting with a guy. I mean, it was like a nothing thing.
Okay.
But the mom didn't want some rumor going around that her daughter was like a flirt. It was like as inane as it gets, right? And I was like, I am not going to meddle in my daughter's affairs. She has to learn this stuff. Resiliency and coping skills are, life is about other humans, and until it's all about robots. But for the short term, I think it's about other humans, and so you have to learn how to deal with them. And humans are uniquely capable of envisioning multiple potential futures. So when I'm dialoguing with you,
there was another thing that you unpacked there that was really important, was that we think that just all of these exponential technologies that are proliferating are going to make things so much better. We're not considering the quality of these present moments that we have with each other to the fullest. We're not augmenting how to have these present moments. That's why we have so many crazy complications.
Yeah, and I'll get back to this concept of the multiple generations, but as in my musings, like, the denominator of humanity, the functional unit, the fundamental element of humanity is a conversation. That's all we do all day long. And whether we think that that's not true, go ahead and stop. Don't communicate with anybody for a day. See how that goes. I mean, that's like silent retreats, and people do that, but
those are fantastic.
They're fantastic,
I love those.
but they're good because you don't have that in the real world. It's like a thing, the people that can do that, right? But if you go to Africa, they have solitude moments all the time. Like, that's normal. We've jam-packed our shit up with so much stuff that we need that as like a, whoa, it's so great. It's like, no, you're just way off balance. If you have to go have a silent retreat for a week, that means like the rest of your life is like, it's like people say, do you work out? I'm like, yeah, but my workout is as I exist in the world. I'm always kind of moving. I have stand-up desks. I don't do the 1 hour of hard cardio. Like, to me, it's like, why not have a whole day of like light exercise, which is as good for you?
Dancing and stretching and
just
movement.
Walking and have a meeting. Let's walk around the block. Let's not sit in the desk. And so I feel like everyone's trying to like find the thing that they're missing, and the thing that they're missing is they're not paying attention to, like, they're filling their plate with things that are shiny objects, and they're trying to pack it all in, and FOMO, and there's reasons for that, because we're curious. We can see all these things. Like,
two things. What first thing is, Aubrey de Grey calls the cell phone the ultimate destroyer of human solitude. I thought that was really interesting. And he's the only person I know that doesn't have a cell phone. And then the other thing was that Jun Yoon taught us about opportunity obesity, how we are just, FOMO is one of the main things, and then also just similar to food obesity now, there's so much opportunity, we don't even know how to apply the Pareto distribution to our opportunity to figure out that only 20% of those opportunities are going to produce 80% of the value that we can provide them, they can provide us, etc.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to to throw those in there while you were going.
Yeah, no, and so going back to this, just to go zoom way out, as I said, I bet if you looked at my 6th grade to 8th grade, and then I could look at my parents,
Yes.
my grandparents,
Yes.
like, I have no idea what my grandparents growing up was like. I couldn't even fathom. To me, it's in black and white, and it's in some other country, and they're making goulash in the morning, and like, I don't know, and
Playing in the courtyard.
and then go back 100 generations. To try to, in your head, we don't have the capacity to do that really, to go back 100 generations and try to imagine what life was like for kids in school.
Like 3,000 years?
Yeah, or like, when there was like, you teach, and I bet all the issues that are happening at my 8th grade school have happened forever. Like, kids get in fights, they learn how to live with each other, but because we can't think of that, we only think of what's in front of us, and like, this is the most, like somehow this is unique. I'm like, no, it's not. This has been going on forever.
But it's more unique because of the information technologies that exist now.
Well, that's true, but I think just the experience of a kid growing up with other kids has always been fraught with, does he like me? Is he mad at me? Are you flirting with me? I mean, there's like basic blocks of humanity, building blocks of humanity.
Totally.
Right?
And like you said, the conversation, it's what we do.
Right, and I think that so if conversations are the fundamental unit, the glue that connects these units together is trust. And so when you unpack trust, and I spend a lot of time thinking about trust because, I say, when you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you do? Right? Well, you realize you're awake. Like, the first thing you do when you wake up is you go, here I am. Like, I'm in bed. You haven't done anything except for realized it. Right? If you get into that granular level, and then you move. You get up and you start moving. And where do you start moving in your day? Like, some people go to the bathroom, some people brush their teeth, some people go downstairs to get coffee. Whatever you do, you trust. Like, we move in the direction of trust. We communicate to things that are trustworthy. Like, we don't go to, if somebody doesn't, like, some jackass, liar, bad guy, you're not going to go and, that's going to be a repellent. It's not going to be an attractant.
Our algorithms guide us towards things that we trust and towards things that we know are producing the
There's a fidelity to it. There's a predictability to it. There's a reliability to it. It's, if that happens over and over and over, I trust it. It has shown me that it's trustworthy. But that's like your toothbrush. It always works. It brushes your teeth. I trust my toothbrush. Like, I know I'm not going to get there and a spider's going to, like, it's going to turn into a spider and like you bite me. Like, that's not going to happen.
That's why you're always very relaxed when you're doing that, rather than you have to be
But when you get in front of another human, like, all bets are off. You know nothing. Even the person that you know really well.
You know nothing.
You like.
It's true.
I tell people, like, look, it's hard enough to know like anybody, but you don't even know who you are.
It's true.
Like, and so how are you going to know anybody else? And so the interesting thing is, so I've been trying to figure out what is trust, and to me, at a level of the kind of the humanist in me, is you trust people, and all we do is communicate with people. I'm getting not to the things that we trust. If they value you, and if they include you, and if you have both of those things, you will get trust. If you only have one of them, you still have some trust. So there was a study done at Harvard a while back about harassment in the workplace, and
let's keep this quick because we have so much
so much
other
talk
good
about
stuff to go through.
And basically what it said is that people who are harassed by their boss, like verbally abused, and or those that are ignored, which is worse? It's the ones that are ignored. Which means that if you're abused verbally, you're at least included. You're not valued, but you're included. But when you're not valued or included, it hurts more.
Yes.
Anyway. So I do think that trust and communication is the name of the game for people. And everything else is filigree.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and that's why you care about linguistics as well.
In words.
Actually, George Ziff was one of the first ones that introduced me to the Pareto distribution, the way that linguistics works. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's been an insanely cool first chunk of time on the program. I feel like we still have so much just there to unpack. Whole episode on just that. Okay. Let's move on.
Sure.
Okay, so moving on, we moved to Georgetown. How did you kind of figure out exactly what how did you go from Georgetown to the private medical? Like,
so Georgetown was great. I had never lived on the other side of the country. I actually went there because I wanted to live in the East Coast because I'm from California. Went to Berkeley. I didn't know anything other than California. I actually wanted to, I thought I wanted to be a hand surgeon at first, like a microvascular hand surgeon. That's where I set my sights on. And then I thought, video games were just starting to, like Nintendos and television and stuff like that. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll do interventional radiology where you actually have joysticks and you're threading vessels to, I'm like, okay, I'll do interventional radiology. That's like, I was a video game freak and I was I learned how to do computers in the 80s when the Apple II came out. I said, Dad, I want to figure this stuff out. I learned how to program. And so I've kind of always been kind of a tech-nophile, like interested in it. And so I did 1 year of residency. You have to do, so I matched in Boston at Boston New England Medical Center to do interventional radiology. And you come out to do 1 year of medicine, general medicine, before you dig into your specialty. So I was out here doing my 1 year of general medicine in San Francisco, where my father was the chief of surgery. And all my friends were here, and it was beautiful weather. In Boston, it was like freezing cold, and and I was like, you know what? I am going to stay here and do internal medicine. Then you get to be a healer, you get to be a doctor of the people, and it just feels better for me. I'm more of a people person. So I asked my program, hey, can I just stay here and do it? So I did that, and it was right around the time of HMOs were eating the world. And when HMOs ate the world,
teach us HMO.
Sorry, I don't use algorithms. I mean, acronyms in general. Health maintenance organizations were the first way of how do we do cost containment. And really what they did is they basically changed the way doctors were paid, and it was like, it was like the little fish eating the bigger fish, or the bigger fish eating the little fish. And so these doctors were getting put into these bigger groups, and these bigger groups had more purchasing power to negotiate contracts with the big payers. And it was like the beginning of like one version of something that didn't work. But as that was going, doctors were getting paid less, and patients were being told they had a gatekeeper now, and it was the first kind of universe of doctors were like gatekeepers versus healers. Like, who wants to be a gatekeeper? Like, that's not what I went into medical school to be, right? No, you can't have that treatment like, because it costs too much. Like, why am I doing that? Anyway, so as that was in full swing, and as I was graduating my residency here in San Francisco, the HMO, the big one called Brown and Toland in town, was being sued by the federal government, the Federal Trade Commission on antitrust. They had too many doctors in this one group that they were a monopoly in San Francisco. They had too many covered lives. So like no other competitors could compete with this group. They'd gotten all the doctors. Yeah. So they were not, and then if you're an HMO, you get like a taxi medallion. Now that you have this HMO, you can take these insurances and get all these patients. So I couldn't get into that group because they had put a freeze on hiring any new doctors because of this Federal Trade Commission lawsuit. So I was like, damn. So I got job offers in Fresno and Modesto and Bakersfield.
Great places. Yeah.
And I was like, nothing wrong with those places, but like my family's here, my friends are here, like my life has been here all my life, like no. So it turns out there's an old guy right around the street here on 180 Montgomery and Post, and he was like this 80-year-old doc, well-established blue chip doctor. He had left the hospital to go downtown, the financial district. He took care of the Charles Schwabs of the world, the employers, not him himself, but the bankers and the. So he said to me, hey, come work with me for a year. I'm going to retire. You can have the whole practice when I retire. The conditions are you're going to be on call 365 days for 1 year. I'm going to take a week off a month, and I'm not going to pay you very much. And you're going to cover for me the week I'm off. I'm like, if I do that for a year, and you retire, then this whole office with the views and all the staff and all the patients and the HMO medallion, and like, I'm in. So I worked my
ass off.
Butt off for a year. I lived nearby on Telegraph Hill, so I'd walk to work. It was great. Yeah. And on month 11, he said, it's time. I said, let's start, we got to get the transition plan going. And, long story short is he basically said, I really like this arrangement. Let's do this. I'll pay you more. I'll, give you. I'm like, no, dude. Like, all I got is my reputation and my word. Yeah. You told me I have a signed document. We have to find a way for you to start training. He's like, I'm just not ready to retire. I'm like, are you telling me you're not gonna no. So I packed up my stuff and I'm out of here, and I quit. I just walked out. I had no plan. Yeah. And I was like, so I got on the street and I'm like, holy shit, what did I just do? Yeah. I got out of a job. I paid the rent, He wasn't paying me that much anyway. So I walked into a little cafe down the street I was like totally dazed, ordered a cup of tea, and I realized, like, where am I? I looked around, I'm like at a hotel lobby in a cafe, and I was like, fancy hotel though, and I was like, oh, it's a 5-star hotel, and like there's a concierge desk and all these fancy people are coming and going, and I just kind of like, I left my universe and went into the universe of hospitality. Like I sometimes just leave my universe and go into another universe. And then I was like, people get sick here at this. So I walked up to the concierge desk and I said, excuse me, who is the doctor you call when somebody gets sick here?
Brilliant.
And she looked at me, she goes, who are you? And I said, well, I could be the doctor you call when somebody gets sick here. She goes, you're a doctor? I said, I'm a doctor. She goes, look, this is a 5-star hotel, and it's the only 5-star hotel in San Francisco at the time. It was the Mandarin. She said, everything we do here is 5-star service. She said, I'm just a concierge and I may be 1-star smart, but everything we do here is 5 stars. Lunches, linens, limos, perfect. Like my guests, we have to give them the best all the time. She said, you're probably 5-star smart because you're a doctor and you went to medical school, but your industry is 1-star service. You don't care about service. So if you want to be the house doctor for my hotel, she took a lot of ownership. She goes, you need to learn 5-star service, or you have to deliver 5-star service. So I looked at her, can you teach me what that means to you? Like I've never been, I've been in hospitals, not hospitality, right? And so she said, well, let me make sure you're a doctor first. So she credentialed, she called the hospital, and I put papers in front of her showing her I was like on the medical society board and blah, blah, blah. And so the next thing you know, I was seeing patients that were like running like senators and governors and NBA players and movie stars and prime ministers that would fly in. And so I had this weird window, and she was like, look, this is when pagers, no cell phones. Well, the cell phones had just come out. So I was the first person to give, so I gave them my email, my pager, and my cell phone. And I was texting back in the late 90s, and before it really was a thing. And so she loved the fact that I could be there in 5 minutes and I could take care of the guests and I would follow up. And so I kind of learned which is basic common sense dignity, decorum. Like 5-star service is it's like just paying attention and self-reflection and trying to, empathy and stuff like that. So the next thing you know, I was the doctor to the Mandarin, and it was like people would gladly pay me a couple $100s in cash for the value that I delivered. I came to their house, their hotel room when they were sick, and I contrasted that when I was in that doctor's office. People would like hold on to their $5 copay and just absolutely not want to pay you the $5 copay. And I was like, why do people not want to give you $5? It's $5. These people have plenty of money, but those people are happy to give you $200 for the house call or $500, whatever. It's because the $5, they didn't see the value in it. Like they didn't see the value in this whole thing. The whole show of medicine, which was zero service, good smarts. Like people didn't really want to be there, so why would they give money for it? So then I understood value. Like, people are willing to part with a resource if they're getting something for it that they value, or they see the value in. Anyway, so then I went to the Ritz-Carlton and I said, who's the doctor to your hotel?
Yes.
They said, who are you? I said, I'm the doctor to the Mandarin. They said, you are? And so one thing led to the other, and I started this house call service in San Francisco in the late 90s. And that's what kind of started my career, like as accidental as everything else in my life. Like
super smart for seeing that, because like you said, value. People need to feel like they're getting value, and then they will gladly depart with their money. And you saw that as a missing link at the 5-star hotel, the only one, the Mandarin, and then you went off and continued Ritz-Carlton. That's just so interesting.
Yeah, and so, but I grew up in a kind of upper middle class. My dad was a surgeon, but we didn't have like great wealth, and I wasn't the society set. Like I wasn't going to these balls in private schools. I was a public school guy, and so like my experience growing up was very, upper middle class, whatever. Lived in the burbs a little bit, but then I had this window into these people's lives, that were, all sorts of celebrity, and I'll use celebrity and not like movie star celebrity. It could be a baseball player, it could be a financial celebrity, just like a governor's a celebrity, and like just this concept of power and fame and whatever that means and whatever that is. But then I was the guy and you realize they're just people.
I love this picture of you. Such a good picture.
Yeah, so I was doing a photo shoot, a new photo headshot, and I had the photographer over at my house. I'm like, I got this super cool top hat that I bought at a vintage store. I said, I want to try that. He's like, put it on. So I was like, I'm like,
great.
Maybe I'll use that headshot from time to time.
Yeah.
For a conference, instead of it's more levity than gravity. Everyone's always trying to show you how serious they are. Yeah. And it's just, or like these artificial smiles for the camera, where it's like, I can do that, but everybody does that. Like, where's the novelty? I mean, our eyes are always trained to novelty.
Yeah, exactly.
And our minds are trained to novelty.
I'm always trying to do weird shit when people take photos.
Yeah.
Okay, so continue.
So anyway, so then the market crashed in 2001, September 11th, and nobody traveled, planes didn't fly, hotels were empty. I had a 7-doctor business at the time. We had grown from the Mandarin to, we were serving all sorts of businesses. Anybody that saw value that wanted a doctor available to them, like lickety split, I was that guy. And so it was called San Francisco On-Call Medical Group. And then all of a sudden, when the market crashed, our revenue went to zero. And I had all these doctors and nurses and people. I'm like, guys, I had to fire people. I had to fire a lot of people, and it was really, really hard.
Yeah.
I'd never done that. And then I realized that when you're in the free market, like if you take insurance and there's an economic hit, people, by the time they get laid off and they lose their insurance, that's a year. It's not immediate. There's the long buffer and delay. The medical economy is generally unaffected by anything else in the economy. Because it's almost like everybody puts into they pay their employer or they have Medicare. It's just it's like a gigantic buffer for doctors. They just don't feel the shock. And that's one of the reasons why they're disconnected from value. If they do great or they do shitty, they're still full. Like if you have a store and you have cockroaches and bad food, no one's eating there. But in medicine, if you say, I'm available, you're full. You're full. As a specialist, you might not be full. You're trying to hump for business all the time because you're trying to get doctors like me to refer to you. So what I realized is wow, I'm in the free market, and this free market is I'm exposed completely to fluctuations in the market.
Yeah.
And so I had to let people go, and I had to retool an organization that was 7 doctors and probably 20 people down to 2 doctors and 1 staff. We really had to skinny that up, or 3 doctors. And it was gut wrenching, and I was in my 30s. I'm damn, I need to meet a girl and have kids, and I gotta I can't have this instability in my life. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I thought, well, maybe I'll go to a subscription model where at least I'm not waiting for the next visit. Like when you do the house call, you get paid for the visit. Some goes to overhead, some goes to you, and it's very transactional.
Yeah.
And so, and I was like, I want to be in something that's not transactional.
Yeah.
It's like a SaaS business. It's subscription. Everybody loves the subscription business, right? Yeah. And so that's when, actually this one guy had called me who I had seen at the Mandarin Oriental years earlier. He said, I'm moving to San Francisco. And I said, well, he goes, can I join your practice? I'm like, yeah, there's an annual fee. He's like, great, I'll sign up. So he signed up, and he was like a major guy in the tech world, still is. And he loved that I was using email and text. Like I was that tip of the spear. Like now we're talking about blockchain. Like back then it was like, hey, the guy uses email and he texts and he's a doctor. Like they don't do that. I found one. Who does that? But to me it was like, shrinking the distance of communication when there's anxiety involved is a good thing for everybody. Yes. Like so, anxiety left over long periods of time just snowballs. It doesn't get better on its own. Anxiety always gets worse left unattended. So, when you have anxiety about your health, you want to get to a doctor that's going to help you get to either I should be worried or I shouldn't be, and if we are, how do we resolve it? And so, like, how do you shrink the distance of anxiety when you have it? And so that was kind of, I think, what this guy saw in me, and that was my kind of operating system, and that was what I learned from the Mandarin is like, how do you make people feel good about the process even if it's not good sometimes?
And these examples that you've given to us and to where I've been able to read and learn more about what's going on, the subscription is totally worth it. You're one click away from a doctor, and you're 2 clicks away from your connections.
My network.
To your network, which are the top experts in the world. So then it's totally worth every single dollar. And these examples of like, oh, my kid broke his leg, we're going to the ER, and you're like, no, I'm going to redirect you to a much better place for a massive operation like that.
Right.
So these types of things, they're life-changing suggestions.
They're very small things, and one of the interesting things is people are like, oh, I want to get Dr. Shlain or private medical. They'll get me the front of the line, right? And so that's like, I'm a, as left-wing liberal as they can be. I've got conservative bones in my body. I've got liberal bones, but I'm more on the side of the people than the some version of the elite that should be better. Like everyone's equal in my book, so to speak. And so I lost my train of thought.
Private medical, subscription service.
Yeah, so
giving these little recommendations.
Yeah,
for
so these little things. So what we is we don't actually cut in the front of the line. I feel like that's a little elitist. We actually remove the line. And what do I mean by that? So if you're sick and you call me up and you say, hey man, I've got this problem, and can you get me in the front of the line? Like, how about I come over to your house and see you right now?
Yeah.
And then I determine that there's no line to go, and here's the problem we can fix. So, but and if I actually had I've had a ton of anecdotes like this, but if I had enough of them, and I could do a proper study around it, I would probably show that by people paying and investing in themselves and their healthcare by hiring somebody like me, or there's 1,000 other groups out there that do it, you actually lower the cost to the system. But the system doesn't care. The system actually, like, as much as we want to lower costs, the system makes money every time you do something in it. So it's a very transactional model, and there's a moral hazard that's infiltrated every aspect of healthcare. The more you do, the more you make. So why would I want to do less? So if there's a choice of, yeah, we're not sure if we should do this or not, like clinically, and there's evidence is like in the middle, everyone's going to go to do something because money is attached to it. If you do nothing, there's no money attached to it. And even though that might be the right thing to do, and I've got a lot of stories about sometimes, and a lot of people in medicine, because it's such a hard to get in, and once you're in, you're like, don't just stand there, doctor, do something. My philosophy is don't just do something, let's stand there. Let's just sit in that uncomfortable place for a minute and talk about why doing something may actually be more negative than doing nothing. Like, what are the pros and cons of nothing if I'm here all the time? Everybody usually wants something done because they don't feel like they have an attachment or connectivity or continuity to you after it's been done. And that's cool.
Ooh, thank you, Ron.
That must be a timer.
That is a 15-minute timer.
Wow.
Yeah, we've been going really hard. It's been fun though. We've been covering a lot of good bases. Now how big is private medical now? It's been 20 years.
So then private medical just turned into a subscription service, which now we have 3 offices in California, and 20 21 doctors, I think.
Nice.
But we take care of families. So we have pediatricians, internal medicine, naturopath, gynecology. And so I look at like healthcare is like, the family is the fundamental unit of humans. And, so how do you take care of a family? So when I think about medicine's pills and, hospitals and shots and surgeries, but health is a much bigger circle around medicine. Medicine's like this gravitational suck that it draws you, pulls you in, but health is like where you exist mostly, and then if something bad happens or something, you wind up there. So how do you keep people away from medicine and in health? And so that's kind of what we do, is we think about you when you're not in front of us. Most doctors only think about you when you're in front of them, and so our role is to think 10, 20 years down the road. Like I was talking to a patient this morning and I said, look, this issue that you have, it doesn't hurt, it doesn't bleed, you don't even think about it, but you have high blood pressure and you're like 40. I said, this will cause heart attacks, strokes, and all sorts of problems for you when you're 60. Yeah. So like, don't ignore this because it doesn't hurt. Or like, why am I taking a pill for something that I don't see? Because I'm thinking 20 years from now. I'm not thinking about right now. You are, because you live in the right now, but I've seen this movie before. Yeah. I've taken care of people that didn't that didn't take care of it. Now I'm dealing with strokes and heart attacks and kidney disease and blindness and like all these things that are non-trivial, but now you're 65 and you're kind of screwed because you just didn't pay attention. So my job is to mind you, because that's not I want you to participate. I'm going to give you all the evidence and the data, and I'm going to treat you the way you treat your investments or anything else that you value in your life. I'm going to value your health, and I'm going to think about it in the future. So we're very proactive. We're always doing stuff proactively. Most of medicine's reactive.
Yes, and then there's also the founding of HealthLoop 10 years ago.
So yeah,
that also kind of ended up catalyzing a good amount of having the strong connection between these ties of efficacy in healthcare.
Well, I realized that here I am in Silicon Valley, and actually the brief story is I had a woman in my office with cough, fever, and shortness of breath, and she was pretty sick, and she was like 70. And she had a community-acquired pneumonia. I listened to her lungs. I'm like, this is a slam dunk pneumonia. It's small, Here's the antibiotics. Here's my cell phone number. You have a 97% chance, according to the literature, of getting better on these antibiotics. But in the 3% chance you don't, like, it could be fatal. So, like, you need to call me if you're not doing better. 5 days later, 7 days later, the phone rang. It was the emergency room. It wasn't her. She goes, she's here in respiratory distress. She's probably not going to make it. We're putting her on a ventilator in the intensive care unit, and my heart sank. And I was like, holy smokes, why didn't she call me? And then I thought, why didn't I call her? And then I kind of I left my head and I went into the universe of like, how did this happen? I kind of got very meta to everything. And I realized while I was in the meta land that healthcare cares about two things. What was the diagnosis and how much time did I spend? And that's how you put those things into the thing and you get paid. Yeah. You have to put codes in when you bill. Now, I don't do that in my practice because I'm all in for a fee. I don't have to bill things. But everybody else does. And then I realized, but the whole system's been built on two codes. What's the diagnosis and how much time did I spend? Yeah. I'm like, where's the empathy code? Yeah. Where's the code for how concerned am I about you? Yeah. Like medically concerned. And so that's when I was like, all this technology is working against me. It's not working for me. So I said, I want to like build an empathy code, and I want to check in with people to figure out how they're doing after they've left here. Like no news is not good news.
This digital trust.
Well, it's like, how do you create digital empathy? So now patients get an email, Dr. Shlain wants to check in with you. Yeah, on the subject line, and you're like, well, my doctor did what? Yeah, and then you open up the email, there's a link, and then it says, hey, you're 5 days into this. So we know what time it is. Yeah. I can predict the future. Because in 5 days,
I've seen the movie.
I've seen the movie before, but I know in 5 days from now, you're going to be wondering about these things, and I'm going to tell you about those things because everybody worries about those things because the human operating system is very predictable.
And you're showing concern, and
then I'm asking them how they're doing. So I tell them what they need to know, and I ask them how they're doing. And two multiple choice questions. They go into the algorithm. If they trip a wire, I get notification. So every day, patients are getting messages. Dr. Shlain, but I'm only getting the ones where they trip the wire, or if they don't check in. So if they don't check in, I treat engagement like a vital sign.
Yeah, they have to engage. You
have to
their health.
Which is why I don't like the words adherence and compliance. Because they're very paternalistic and like bad dog. You weren't compliant.
It's engagement.
It's a participation.
With your own health.
It's participation and engagement. Like we need to use words that are more maternal and friendly and soft and like you want to engage and participate, but you don't want to be compliant. Like that's like, I guess I got to, but I don't want, there's such a negative edge around that stuff.
And so we have literal studies about how this showing concern for somebody else's health and checking in frequently, building this digital
that's
layer.
right.
So let's showcase some of them.
So we did a study with Anthem over the last 18 months where we did patients on HealthLoop. Patients would be randomized to HealthLoop, or that's not this one, but no, this is this one.
Okay.
A multi-center, special orthopedic surgery, hip and knee surgeries only. So people that were going to get a major hip and a knee replacement, you were either randomized to be put on HealthLoop or just to go to the way it's always been going. So and the way that always been going is you see your doctor and then 2 weeks later you have a follow-up visit maybe and you make some calls if you know. So this is like a guided tour through your story on HealthLoop or not. And what we found is that we could detect things early. Like if someone said I got a little cramp in my calf, after surgery, that's a blood clot until proven otherwise. But most people think, well, I had surgery, I probably got a cramp. And then what happens? That blood clot breaks off and it goes into their lungs. They have a pulmonary embolus and they wind up in the ICU and they cost millions of dollars and they sometimes don't live.
Wow.
Or they have a little redness or they have a little fever and they think that's normal, but it's the beginning of an infection. So by using HealthLoop, you have these leading indicators of bad things that are about to happen. Like I can't prevent it from happening per se, but I can prevent it from spiraling out of control by catching it early and course correcting and intervening. So what this study showed and by the way, the engagement on HealthLoop over time is like 78-80%. Meaning that every time a patient gets a thing, they click on it, they read it, they answer the questions. So imagine if you're like a tech company or software company and you send out a mass mailing, like success is 2%. If 2% of people open up your thing, you'll call that a success. 5% is like amazing, 10% is you won. We're getting 78%.
Wow.
Over the course of a year. People will check in a year later, we're building trust. We're showing them that we care for them. This helps them participate and engage. But we actually lowered the cost, $656 per case. I mean, that's like non-trivial. And
this makes so much sense because you're reaching out to them more frequently.
Well, it's proactive.
It's proactive. They're actually able to say how they feel or what's going on with them. And then, like you said, you're able to prevent the onset of further issues because you're actually communicating with.
Communication is the fundamental unit. So everyone's building IT infrastructure. I'm like, you know what? I'm done with that. We need communication architecture. That's what we need. We need a communication architect to come in and say, how should we communicate? And so this is like version 1 of a communication architecture around a complex system that does not value or pay for communications. We only value and pay for what's the disease and how much time did you spend. After that, there's no payment for communication. It's like, so like to me, it's like we should just pay for outcomes. And so this is, UCSF did a study. Will patients give you, information? And so this is like, patients will complete information 6 months later at 55%. Patients are telling you how they're doing. They are because they're telling their doctor. They're not telling some third-party company.
Correct.
Their doctor owns the information.
They want to get the insights about their health.
And the doctors want to know how the patients are doing.
Yes.
Like if you ask a patient, would you like the best outcome the fastest for this? The answer is 100% yes. There's no patient, no, I want a bad outcome. If you ask doctors, would you like your patients to get the best outcome the fastest? It's of course. So here you have the two main actors in healthcare, the doctor and the patient. They both want the same thing, but everyone's conspiring to not let that happen in the weirdest, ridiculous ways because no one's built this healthcare system. It is a patch on top of a patch. So it's a quilt of bad ideas trying to fix bad ideas that masquerade as good ideas. That it's like whack-a-mole. You fix it here and it creates a problem over there. So there's no one's like looking at the broader thing.
70% relative reduction in 30-day admissions.
Yeah. So you have surgery and you use HealthLoop. There's a large chance that you won't have to go back to the hospital. So
exactly.
These things are like, it's almost as though people see this, they don't believe it. They're like, no way. And so doctors are skeptical, administrators at hospitals are skeptical. They just don't believe it.
And is HealthLoop purchased by hospitals?
By hospitals and doctors right now. But now we have insurance companies saying, hey, this saves money. So there may be a moment where insurance companies say, hey, you have to use this. Like this is something that.
Yeah, it's better to use. Yeah, exactly.
Like why would you not use it? Tell me
yeah.
why you're not. And the reason is, and this is crazy, is like we make money on readmissions.
Yeah,
we actually make money on readmissions. It's crazy, dude. It's crazy. Yeah. So, but what Obama did, like him or not, is. This is an interesting study. This is the super interesting study, which I want to get to, is Obama said, hey, your income should reflect your outcomes. Like that's the if somebody was going to simplify Obamacare, yes, get insurance coverage, but on the other side of it, like, you know, that's just like covered, not covered. But underneath it, it's we're going to change the system to create you get paid if you get a good outcome. So, right, but how do you know? How do you get a good outcome? Compliance, adherence, patient leaves. How do you know?
Yeah.
There's no communication architecture.
Yeah, there's got to be communication.
There's got to be
architecture,
communication architecture to solve that problem. This was one where at MD Anderson we did. It was one of the first ones we did. People that are just told they've got stage 4 they've got cancer. You got to go through the PET scan to find out what stage it is. So these people are about to come out of this scan and be told how bad it is or how bad it isn't.
Yeah.
But it's like super high stakes. As anxious as a moment of your life you're going to get.
Yeah.
Going into the machine to tell you what's on the other
A
end.
couple months or a year, a couple years. Yeah.
They're gonna, you have a month to live, or you need 3 surgeries and radiation and chemo. Like on the other side of this scan, all that information exists.
Yeah.
So they found that a lot of people that would go into this scanner, they would have like super high anxiety and they'd have a panic attack, and they wouldn't do it because they just couldn't.
Yeah.
They had a freak out, and they thought this was going to give them some pain. They didn't understand what this was. All in comes all. So what we decided to do, the 2 guys that work the machine, the 2 doctors, we said, what if we scheduled people 2 weeks? And by the way, when they freak out, they don't get the scan. Then they got to get a mental health visit, a physical. They got to come back for the scan 2 weeks later, and then they got to get sedated. They need a ride home. The cost goes way up if you have a freak out.
Yeah.
And you didn't get the answer, and someone could have filled that spot that like you wait. There's all sorts of inefficiencies for the freak out. Like that happened all in the supply chain of like scheduling and everything. So we said, well, what if we just had patients in the run up to the scan? HealthLoop will just, we're not going to ask them how they're doing. Well, we'll ask them a few questions, but we'll show them what it is. We'll have patients that have gone through it and explain to them it's not that bad. You know, and we'll communicate with the guys that they're going to meet when they show up, these like daily videos and just education, and the literacy rate went way up, and the amount of people that freaked out went way down because they understood, they got educated. The answer is education. It always is, and education has to come with communication.
And so you're messaging them ahead of time prior to their PET scans.
Right. So what we say is we've been to the future. We know it's going to.
So it used to be only 21% used to know what ionizing radiation is. Now 66% do, et cetera. So they're becoming more.
So when you increase the education, you decrease the freakouts.
Freakout, yeah, exactly. Which are inefficiencies in healthcare.
And there's
so interesting because you can do this not just only after an operation. You can do it before an operation.
There's a pre and the post, and like this has been like this crazy window on things that I would have never known or thought about. But HealthLoop has given me a much more bigger perspective on how one little efficiency through communication solves 9 other, and that everyone's trying to solve that inefficiency with a better scheduling system or like make the patient pay a little bit more, or like they've got but no, just fucking communicate.
Communicate. Yeah, you're really nailing it with HealthLoop. I love it. And I think this synergized with like patients like me, that community, as well as kind of like BioTrillion, like organizations that are leveraging biometrics plus machine learning to really figure out.
There's a lot of learning.
Like all of these things jam-packed together with what HealthLoop's doing as well is just going to be an amazing progress in healthcare. And I'm so excited moving forward with it. I want to touch on just a couple of these other things on the way out. So Tincture Health, people can subscribe and get.
Well, it's just a publication that I created. It's an ideas, but I fund it, self-funded, and basically tincture.io is what it is. And it's basically, I get all these really smart people to write little essays about the ideas they have about healthcare. And the way I frame it is if you walk into a big warehouse and there's flashlights shining on various walls, you'll only see what the flashlight shines on. You will not know what the whole room looks like because it's dark until you get to a place where there's light. But if you took all the flashlights that were shining on something and you put them in the center of the room, you may light up the room, and then you could see the whole thing, and then you could start thinking differently about how to solve that problem. And so I'm trying to illuminate this gigantic room of healthcare because everyone's always looking at the one thing that they know. And there's not a place to go where you can see other things that are adjacent, orthogonal, parallel, meta, that will just make you think different about the way you've been thinking about the thing that's right in front of you forever. So Tincture's a place to go expand your mind, and then you can, if you're a good writer and you got a good idea, go. But you can't talk about your company and you can't talk about yourself. This is an idea, where ideas meet each other, you know.
And then this is not only go tincture.io and go receive the great newsletter that's going out about this with all these great ideas. But also, I just definitely want to touch on Eat Real as well. You're going out to cafeterias and schools and hospitals, and this is also really important. Making sure that the food, like you said, it's not food-like substances.
It's actual food.
It's actual food.
And food, by the way, comes from three things: sunlight, soil, and water.
Yeah.
If it didn't come from that, it's not food.
Yeah.
It's a food-like substance.
Yeah.
Right? And so like real food is real food. Like we know
Sunlight,
where it comes
soil, and
from.
water. Yeah.
It's just 3 ingredients.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
I mean, a little bit of tender loving care, in a good environment, but it doesn't come from a factory. It just doesn't. If it does, it's not food. It's a food-like substance. And so like LEED certification, says this building is like sustainable and it was, solar and whatever. So we're trying to build like a LEED-like certification. So it's a trust mark certification for organizations that serve food. So is this restaurant, is this cafeteria at school, is this hospital, are they serving toxic substances or are they serving real food?
Yes.
And so we want to start highlighting those. So Stanford University undergrad is certified. The Grand Ole Opry is certified. UCSF Hospital System certified.
Great.
The Plant Cafe got our platinum certification.
It's crucial.
So there
The
are
schools
we
where
have
the kids are
schools
at,
in the East Bay. We're going to start certifying schools. So we have like 600 certifications, but we're a nonprofit. We're under the radar. So if you have any interest in this and you want to help out,
We'll have links in the bio.
yeah, please
Definitely
check it out
check it
and
out.
help out, spread the word. I just feel like I can't change any individual behavior on a person. I can't change the billions of dollars that Coke and Pepsi and all these big companies are spending. But what I can do is go to the places where people eat and talk to those people, the chefs, and tap into their moral obligation to not poison their students, their patients, their employees, or their customers.
Yeah, it's better for the collective.
Yeah.
So, couple quickies on the way
Yep,
out of
yep.
simulation. A couple of questions that we really like to ask. Just the first one
Sure.
being, what do you think about what's going on with wealth inequality? There's a lot of concentration of wealth in the very, very top couple percent of people, and then the bottom layer is kind of slowly coming up as well, but at a much slower rate than the top is. What do you think is happening with that, as well as globalization, with the United States collaborating with China, Russia, progressing?
Well,
moving
I think
forward?
that the second question first is the global economy is so interconnected that doing a trade war about a metal or a thing, nobody realizes how many people are involved in that metal. So you're not affecting it's all interconnected now. So you can't take a very simplistic view of the world. You have to have a nuanced, multi-level view. And so, anything you do is going to have pros and cons, and some of them are going to be totally unknown to you. You're not going to know. There'll be an emergent property and complex systems develop emergent properties. And so when you start tinkering with complex systems, you get all these emergent properties that, it's a whack-a-mole. So that's why you really have to think about what you're doing and really talk to stakeholders. So I think that globalization and inequality, and so I have a front row seat, candidly, to a lot of wealth. I'm not that wealthy myself, and I feel like to some degree, once you have lots of wealth, you're either generous and philanthropic, or it becomes just a game, and whatever you have, you want more because more is better. And there's a lot of people out there that they just want more, and they're unaware, candidly, of all the people that don't have anything because they're never really in those circles. And those people in those the masses in general, they never get behind that gate to see what's in that gate. So you can watch Pimp My Ride, and you can watch the lifestyles of the rich and famous, and you get a micro window into it. But the truth is the people in the world, I call them the vagaries. They just have to, they got to get their food, they got to go to the bathroom, they got to go to their job. It's life is just a series of events that come at you, and you have to deal with them, right? That's all life is. But the rich people have to do that too. They have the same things, just with gold plated or not, right? It's still the same food you have to eat, the same bathroom you have to use, or the same problem with your girlfriend, son, wife, mother. Everyone has the same. To me, everyone has the same issues. But money is corroding. I think. I think the people at the bottom have it better than they ever have. I still think it's not good enough, right? I think that how much money does a person need? At the end of the day, how much can one person really have? And if you have billions and billions and billions, you should take that privilege and show others what you can and be that generous person. I say the people that are rich and cheap are unlucky. It's just unfortunate. They could do so much.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm starting to see a lot more people starting to come to that realization because wealth is concentrated so fast and in such a short period of time.
We gain a lot of meaning and purpose from helping others. Yeah.
Humanity is about people, and helping people is, I think, the most rewarding thing one can do.
Yes. All right. What do you think is the most beautiful thing in the world?
The most beautiful thing in the world is a child laughing, is the laughter of a child. The pure joy. To me, that is the most beautiful thing in the world. I could just watch little kids giggling and laughing over the silliest things all day long. It is like eminent joy for me to watch that.
Mo Gaudat was recently teaching us, like, you should go do an experiment where you just go and watch children and watch them giggle, watch them have happiness, and it's inherent. And only later does culture close the aperture on.
Well, I think that laughter in general and comedy is kind of the art of absurdity. So things that are funny. If someone says, "I was just kidding, that was a joke," like then it wasn't funny, right? If you have to disclaim that it was a joke, then it wasn't a joke, right? Then it was like sarcasm or an opinion masquerading as whatever, a joke. But true comedy is when there's something absurd, and it's like, so my daughter was reading me ad-libs this morning before I came here, and she was like giggling. I just wanted to stay and watch the giggles. I was like, God, that's so much fun.
Stay and watch the giggles.
Stay and watch the giggles.
Dr. Shlain, are we alone in the cosmos?
It depends on what you mean by alone, and it depends on what you mean by cosmos, right? I mean, first of all, we don't know what the cosmos is. It's ever expanding, it's contracting. It's, in humans, our version of intelligence is a carbon-based thing with sentiency and a mind and a complex system. And like, there could be other versions of complex systems that are not carbon-based that have some like functionality that they do something. Is that intelligence? Is that alone? Like, so I think there's a version of everything. Like, we're one version, but there's a version of everything out there, and I like this version because I guess we have to, right? That's all we got. Yeah. So I don't think we're alone, but I don't think like there's aliens with like big heads and eyeballs that are in flying saucers and stuff. Like, I think that life is an interesting thing to define. I think complex systems, and I study a lot of complex systems. And biologic systems are just complex systems,
yes.
And so is
human body's super complex.
But so are rock formations that the river flows through. It's like that's a whole complex the way that all works.
Thanks, geologists.
Yeah. So I think that we're not alone when we're with each other, and when we're by ourselves, we're not with each other, so we're alone. But cosmologically speaking, we're made out of stardust. Like, light turns into plants that we eat that makes us go, right? Yep. And so where did that light come from? So we are of the cosmos. We're not, I don't view ourselves as like we're a separate thing that exists in it. We're of it.
Totally.
Everything's of it.
We're the brothers and sisters, though. So
we are for now. I mean,
yeah. So how about, do you think there's a designer to the universe?
Ooh, what a great question. I think that when people say designer, it implies a person or a thing or some entity, like a god or somebody sitting on a chair or somebody like, with a calculator. I think the universe is exactly the way it's supposed to be. And I think it's all emergent. And I don't think that somebody like said, okay, radius of a carbon electron outside of the proton needs to be this distance, which creates the properties of water, and then water will create the properties of life. I just think that this is like a grand experiment happening in front of our eyes, and I just think properties of the universe have manifested emergently, and they will continue to do so.
Yeah. Jordan Shlain, this has been such a pleasure. Holy cow.
Yeah, we covered some ground.
We did, yes. And you are a very multidisciplinary man, not just in health, but also in society and in emotion and in understanding humans. And I really appreciate that so much, and technology as well. We have a lot more to unpack on another show with you. I'm really looking forward to that. Thanks again for joining us so much.
With pleasure. Yeah, thanks for having me.
It was great learning about everything, man, and I really love that lesson. from Kenya, and I really loved what HealthLoop is doing right now, and oh my God, panic attack before the PET scan, because yeah, you're gonna learn that on the way out. There's so many cool things we unpacked. Guys, if you had a good time, definitely share this content with 2 other people. They'll share it with 2 people. Just go teach people what you learned from here. Also, go and create with this content. Don't just consume. Go make a blog, go make a video, start a company in space, go and execute cool things into the world. Also, join us on Patreon. We need to continue supporting the studio, expanding, growing the team, growing the impact, growing the reach, getting to the football stadium. So let's get there together. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thanks Ron for producing the show. Much love everyone. Peace.